the notorious serial killers, we think of Bundy and Gacy and so on. Yeah, I mean, there's this monster that lives within them that just coexists, with their rational selves, and that just takes possession of them, on a regular basis, and
Yeah.
and compels them to commit these atrocities. So again, Melville, in his book Billy Budd, talks about the villain Claggart. He says, he said these men are madmen of the most dangerous sort because they're very rational,
Yeah.
usually of above average intelligence, but they employ their rationality for the most malevolent ends. That malevolence is just like this thing inside them that that takes possession of them. I mean, for all that I've studied serial murder and so on and so forth, I've given up trying to understand
Yeah.
the sources of that kind of criminal psychopathology, how it operates. I mean, what I've
It's so varied, Harold. Like,
well,
I think,
it's just yeah. I'm sorry.
oh no, sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to put in.
No, I just would say, I say to people, you can't understand a Jeffrey Dahmer any more than you can understand a Mozart.
Yeah.
They're just
That's
so,
100%.
the Bible talks about the mysteries of iniquity. Where evil comes from, how it operates. I mean, those are just at this point beyond our comprehension. So, I mean, we're always looking in a way for reassuring, easy answers. Oh, he was abused as a child, or he suffered a head injury when he was 5 years old. But ultimately, it's a mystery.
Yeah, and that's like, I think our brains are so hardwired to find patterns, because we need to be able to explain things. Like, unclosed loops are really great against our kind of rational brain, that frontal cortex. We need to be able to close the loop, understand it. But I think the variance then across like killers is so wide. Like, it's exactly what you said. Like a Ted Bundy, because it all, like, the fantasies differ, the methodology differs, the motives differ. And I think that's what makes it exciting, but sometimes it's what really frustrates it as well for any like true crime fan, because I always fall into the trap of, asking the guests like a singular question, trying to quantify like a very multivariate response, because there is like, why does someone kill? Well, like it's such a low resolution question that I've actually trained myself not to ask anymore, because it's just a low resolution question, because everything is so dependent on variation, and that why someone does that, like, why someone does one thing is completely different than someone else's motivation, even though they might converge onto the exact same outcome. And I think that's the probably lesson is what I've seen is there's just so much multivariance, but
Yeah.
I think but then there's almost an element in me as well that wants to speculate.
Yeah.
On,
Well, I mean, they do have
it's
certain
because of
things.
this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all those psychos, Bundy and Gacy and Dahmer and so on and so forth. I mean, they do have one thing in common. I mean, they're all sexual psychopaths.
Yeah, that's it.
They're all extreme sexual sadists. It's sexual, what used to be called in the old days lust murder. It's a phenomenon. There's nothing new about that phenomenon. There seemed to be, again, this particular period in the United States where that produced a number of these extreme sexual homicidal sex monsters. But they do share that they're all extreme sexual sadists who derive their sick pleasure from torturing and murdering helpless victims.
Yeah.
But again, exactly what the source of that particular psychopathology is very hard to say.
Yeah. And like, Harold, touching on that, right? So we know well, from the stats I got now, correct me if I'm wrong, 1970s, I think the FBI had a clocked at around 250 active serial killers within the US. And I think the most up to date stats I can get is around FBI clocks at around 50 or less
Mm-hmm.
active serial killers. I don't want to say like is that trend dying out. Like I think the environment has evolved at such a pace that a successfully operating a serial killer isn't conducive to to being able to stay active. You're going to get caught.
Yeah.
Uh, so we know I don't think any of these drives, like you go back into history, man, you see like sexual sadism, you have a Tossa, which is Xerxes' mother, like incredibly psychopathic and evil woman. You have, which again, some people will argue with me on this and stuff like that, but Genghis Khan, like this, like there's a bloodlust there that goes on beyond conquering a land and stuff like that. We've seen it throughout history. And what I think now is society, surveillance, like law enforcement's forensics, everything is squeezing into this point where these dark fantasies are becoming less feasible to be acted upon. So what then spouts out of that? Like, I know we're living in a virtual world. We have lots of, you can go into like probably weird pornographic routes or whatever everyone wants to go to. But then what spawns out of like, this unenactment? Like, have you any theories on this? You've followed this your whole career. Like, what's the reformation maybe of that serial killer within modernity?
Well, I mean, I think, first of all, there were certain cultural conditions that produced that surge of serial sex murderers.
Like which?
Well, I mean, I think in the United States, and I guess in the West in general, there was this complete dropping of inhibitions. It's like the collective id was suddenly released
Oh, Freud.
as a result of the social and sexual revolution of the late 60s, early 70s. The philosophy back then was, hey, if it feels good, do it. But that didn't take into account that for some people, what feels good, is abducting a helpless person and torturing them and then murdering them.